10 simple tips that will force your body to build muscle faster. Have you ever wondered why some people can gain muscle relatively quickly, while others spend years training and the results seem invisible? The truth is that to build a muscular physique, you essentially need two things: doing the right things and giving it time. But when I talk about right things, I'm not just referring to going to the gym 5 times a week and following a diet you hate, eating chicken or eggs in every possible meal. There are crucial details in your daily life that, when consistently implemented, make all the difference in your long-term results. So today, you'll see 10 simple but extremely powerful tips that will force your body to gain muscle faster, explaining why each one works, so you understand the science behind the process. But before we begin, tell me in the comments your name and how long you've been training. Tip number 10. Strengthen yourself with compound exercises. Unlike isolation exercises, which work only one specific muscle group, compound movements, such as squats, deadlifts, bench press, and pull-ups, recruit multiple muscle groups simultaneously. They allow you to lift much heavier loads, which means more mechanical tension in the muscles, one of the main triggers for muscle growth. A study published in the Journal of Strength and Conditioning Research showed that individuals who focused on compound exercises for 12 weeks had significantly greater strength and hypertrophy increases compared to those who concentrated on isolation exercises. Additionally, these movements have an impressive hormonal impact. When you perform a heavy squat, for example, your body releases much larger amounts of testosterone and growth hormone, two crucial anabolic hormones for muscle building. A heavy squat can elevate your testosterone levels by up to 200% compared to a leg extension exercise with the same perceived effort. This doesn't mean you should completely abandon isolation exercises. They have their place in your training program to refine specific areas and correct imbalances. But remember, an efficient hypertrophy program should have at least 50% compound exercises as its foundation. Number 9. Incorporate healthy fats into your diet. There's a persistent myth in the fitness world that fats should be avoided at all costs. Nothing could be further from the truth, especially when we talk about muscle building. Healthy fats aren't just important. They're absolutely essential for anyone who wants to maximize their gains. Fats play a fundamental role in hormone production, especially testosterone synthesis. A study published in the International Journal of Sports Medicine showed that men who followed a diet rich in healthy fats for just 6 weeks had significantly higher testosterone levels than those who followed low-fat diets. But which fats should you prioritize? Focus on monounsaturated and some polyunsaturated fats, found in foods like avocado, extra virgin olive oil, nuts, seeds, fatty fish like salmon and sardines, and even egg yolks. The omega-3 present in fish deserves special attention because besides supporting hormonal function, it has anti-inflammatory properties that help with post-workout muscle recovery. Number 8. Don't do excessive cardio. Who hasn't seen that person at the gym who spends 40 minutes on weight training and then runs for an hour on the treadmill every day? Despite seeming like the person is putting in more effort, excessive cardio is one of the biggest enemies of hypertrophy. When you perform long cardio sessions, especially at moderate to high intensity, your body activates metabolic pathways that can directly interfere with the anabolic processes necessary for muscle growth. In simple terms, you're sending contradictory signals to your body. Grow and get bigger through strength training, but be efficient and save energy through excessive cardio. From a hormonal perspective, excessive cardio can increase cortisol levels, the stress hormone, which, when chronically elevated, promotes muscle degradation and hinders recovery. Additionally, intense cardio competes for the same energy and nutritional resources that your body needs to repair and build muscles after strength training. Therefore, if you want to maintain cardiovascular health without compromising your gains, opt for moderate cardio. 30 to 45 minutes of moderate walking 3 to 4 times per week is already perfect. The conversation test rule is perfect. During cardio, you should be able to maintain a conversation without getting breathless. If you can't speak without losing your breath, the intensity is too high. A study from the University of Tampa showed that individuals who performed moderate cardio for more than 45 minutes, more than 4 times a week, had significantly lower strength and hypertrophy gains compared to those who limited cardio to 3 to 4 short weekly sessions. Number 7. Maintain a caloric surplus. If I had to choose just one tip from this list to share, it would be this one. Without a caloric surplus, you could have the best genetics in the world, the best trainer, cutting-edge supplementation, and still, your results will be minimal. It's simply impossible to build significant muscle tissue without providing the body with the energy surplus needed for this process. Muscle growth is an anabolic process that requires energy, lots of energy. Your body won't prioritize building new muscle tissue, which is metabolically expensive to maintain, if it's operating with limited resources. To implement this tip correctly, you first need to know your total daily energy expenditure, which is the sum of your basal metabolism. That is, how much your body spends on basic functions like pumping blood, for example, plus the expenditure on daily activities and exercises. There are online calculators that can give you an initial estimate, but ideally, you should monitor your caloric intake and weight for a few weeks to find your equilibrium point. Once you know how many calories keep your weight stable, add between 300 to 500 daily calories to create a moderate and sustainable surplus. A common mistake is to exaggerate this surplus, thinking that more is better. In fact, a very large excess of calories will mainly result in fat gain, not muscle. And here's the crucial point. The quality of these calories matters enormously. It's not just about eating hamburgers and sweets until you reach your caloric goal. A surplus composed mainly of nutritious and minimally processed foods will provide the building blocks necessary to optimize protein synthesis and minimize fat gain. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Having constant access to correct and science-based information is what will make you progress with health in the long term in the bodybuilding world. Number 6, aim to get close to muscle failure. If you observe most people at the gym, you'll see that many of them seem to be just going through the motions, doing their sets with comfortable weights without really challenging the muscles. This approach may maintain your general health, but it's far from optimal for stimulating maximum muscle growth. The science of hypertrophy is clear. To induce significant changes in muscle structure, you need to create a sufficiently intense stimulus that forces your body to adapt. It's the famous principle of progressive overload, and one of the best ways to implement it is by training close to muscle failure. What does close to failure mean? We're talking about taking your muscles to the point where you could only do 1 to 2 more repetitions with proper technique before completely failing. At this level of effort, you maximize muscle fiber recruitment, particularly the type 2 fast-twitch fibers, which have the greatest potential for hypertrophy. A study published in the Journal of Applied Physiology demonstrated that sets taken close to failure produced a significantly greater anabolic response compared to sets performed with the same weight, but stopped well before the point of failure. This occurs because training close to failure maximizes 3 main mechanisms of hypertrophy: mechanical tension, muscle damage, and metabolic stress. On the other hand, it's important to note that it's not necessary nor recommended to train to absolute failure in all exercises and sets. This can quickly lead to overtraining and increase the risk of injuries. A smarter approach is to apply this principle mainly in your final exercises for each muscle group, and perhaps in the last set of your main compound exercises. Number 5, consume protein in all meals. It's not enough to just reach your total daily protein goal. The distribution throughout the day is equally crucial. Muscle protein synthesis is stimulated whenever we consume an adequate amount of protein. This stimulus has an effect ceiling, which means there's a limit to how much muscle you can build in a single protein-rich meal. For example, consuming 60 grams of protein at once is not twice as effective as consuming 30 grams, but distributing those 60 grams in 2 separate meals potentially can be. A study published in the Journal of Nutrition compared 2 groups consuming the same total amount of daily protein, 120 grams. One group consumed 30 grams in each of the 4 meals, while the other consumed 20 grams at breakfast, 25 grams at lunch, 45 grams at dinner, and 30 grams before bed. After 12 weeks, the group with more balanced distribution showed significantly greater muscle mass gains, despite identical total caloric and protein intake. The explanation for this is in the anabolic window created after protein consumption, which lasts approximately 3 to 5 hours. By distributing your protein intake in 4 to 6 meals throughout the day, separated by 3 to 4 hours, you essentially keep your body in an anabolic state for longer, maximizing the potential for muscle growth. In practical terms, aim to consume at least 20 to 30 grams of high-quality protein in each meal. Excellent sources include lean meats, eggs, dairy, fish, and for vegetarians, intelligent combinations of legumes, grains, and soy-based products. Protein supplements like whey protein can be convenient tools to ensure you reach this goal in meals where it would be difficult to consume complete proteins. Number 4. Use intensity techniques to vary the stimuli. Our body is an extraordinary adaptation machine. When repeatedly subjected to the same stimulus, it becomes increasingly efficient at responding to that specific stimulus, which is great for survival but not so good for continued muscle growth. Intensity techniques are specific methods that increase the challenge imposed on the muscles beyond simply lifting and lowering the weight. They manipulate variables such as time under tension, eccentric overload, metabolic stress, and muscle fatigue to create a new and more potent stimulus for hypertrophy. Among the most effective techniques are drop set series, where you perform a set close to failure, immediately reduce the weight, usually by 20 to 30%, and continue without rest. Forced repetitions, where a training partner helps you complete 2 to 3 repetitions beyond the point where you would fail alone. And the rest pause method, which involves performing a set almost to failure, resting 10 to 15 seconds, and continuing with a few more repetitions, repeating this cycle 2 to 3 times. Other valuable techniques include isometric contractions, maintaining the contraction at a specific point of the movement for 5 to 10 seconds, and partial repetitions, which means executing only a portion of the complete movement, usually the most difficult part. The beauty of these techniques lies not only in the additional intensity they provide, but also in how they activate distinct hypertrophy mechanisms. For example, drop sets are particularly effective at increasing metabolic stress and blood flow to the muscles, while slow and controlled repetitions maximize time under tension. Number 3, focus on correct execution. Many train to feed the ego, using impressive loads with questionable form, instead of training to effectively stimulate the target muscles. Correct execution is not just a matter of safety, it's fundamentally a matter of effectiveness. When you execute a movement with proper technique, you ensure that the training stimulus is directed precisely to the muscles you intend to develop, maximizing results and obviously minimizing the risk of injuries. A fascinating study published in the European Journal of Applied Physiology compared muscle activation during the barbell bench press when executed with correct technique versus compromised technique, but with heavier loads. The results were revealing. Despite using loads up to 15% lighter, correct execution resulted in significantly greater activation of the pectoral muscles, the primary target of the exercise. Meanwhile, the compromised technique diverted much of the stress to the deltoids and triceps, limiting gains in the chest. This principle applies to virtually all exercises. In squats, for example, correct execution with adequate depth activates many more fibers of the quadriceps, glutes, and hamstrings than a half squat with a heavy load. A common mistake I observe is the rush to progress in loads without first mastering the movement pattern. Remember, your muscle doesn't know how much weight is on the bar. It only responds to the tension it feels. And to maximize that tension in the right muscle, technique needs to be prioritized. Over time, executing everything correctly instead of training the ego not only produces superior results, but also allows for more sustainable progression, reduces joint wear, and will prolong your career in bodybuilding. Because there's nothing more frustrating than interrupting your gains due to avoidable injuries caused by inadequate technique. Number 2, train strength more frequently. Many people still follow the traditional model of dividing the body into specific muscle groups and training each one only once a week, the famous Monday to Friday training, each day a muscle group. However, muscle protein synthesis is elevated for approximately 24 to 48 hours after an adequate training stimulus. After this period, it returns to baseline levels. This means that, by training a muscle group only once a week, you're essentially leaving that muscle idle for 5 to 6 days without a significant anabolic stimulus. A meta-analysis published in Sports Medicine analyzed 10 studies comparing different training frequencies and concluded that training each muscle group 2 to 3 times per week resulted in significantly greater hypertrophy gains compared to a single weekly session, even when the total training volume was equated. The key to successfully implementing a higher training frequency is in the proper management of volume and intensity per session. When you train a muscle group more frequently, the volume per session should be proportionally reduced to avoid overtraining. For example, if you normally do 16 sets for chest once a week, when changing to twice weekly, you could do 8 sets in each session. This adjustment in training frequency can be especially beneficial for individuals who feel they have reached a plateau in their muscle development, providing a new stimulus to promote continuous adaptations. Number 1. Take creatine. If there's a supplement that deserves a place of honor on the shelf of any person serious about muscle gain, that supplement is creatine. Unlike many other products that promise miracles and deliver questionable results, creatine monohydrate has decades of robust scientific research backing its efficacy and safety. Creatine is a compound that naturally occurs in the body and is involved in the high-energy phosphate system, which fuels intense, short-duration muscle contractions, exactly the type of effort you perform during strength training. By supplementing with creatine, you increase muscle reserves of this compound by approximately 20 to 30%, which translates into significant improvements in strength, power, and ability to perform high-intensity repetitions. Besides allowing you to train with more intensity, creatine has direct effects on muscle biology. It increases muscle cell hydration, creating a more anabolic environment. The good news is that creatine monohydrate is incredibly accessible, costing on average less than 1 Riyal per daily dose. The effective dose is simple, 3 to 5 grams per day, every day. Creatine is safe for long-term continuous consumption, as demonstrated by studies that followed users for several years. An important detail: creatine works best when consumed with a meal containing carbohydrates, as insulin helps transport it to the muscles. It's also essential to stay well hydrated, since creatine attracts water to muscle cells. And if you plan to start taking creatine, know that it's extremely important to avoid the 10 most common mistakes that most people make when taking this supplement, which unfortunately throw the supplement in the trash, besides causing damage to the body. If you want to know what they are, we've left a video appearing right now on the screen showing and better explaining each of them. Thank you for watching this far, and may God bless you, my friend.